Hello and welcome to this episode of Hospitality Tech Talk brought to you by Maestro PMS. I'm your host, Michelle Dawn Mooney. This is the second episode in a special three-part series with Ascent360 CEO and President Scott Buelter, who brings a vast resume of experience working with data analysis and digital marketing at companies like Nike, Disney, Royal Caribbean, Lowe's Hotels, American Express, and Samsung. Scott, thanks again for being here. I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation with you.
Thank you. You too. I'm so good to be here. Very much enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, we have a lot that we've already covered, but we still have a lot to get to. So in episode 1, and if you missed that, I definitely want to encourage people to go back and watch that before you watch this one, or you can watch this one twice if you want. But in the first part of the conversation, we touched on what it is that Ascent360 does for hoteliers. But let's talk about results, Scott, because at the end of the day, that's what really counts, right? So how does this integration actually help hotels drive better marketing? Any standout use cases you might want to share with us?
There's a bunch, right? So, to review, right, what we're doing is getting data out of Maestro so that we can do dynamic, highly personalized messaging. I think there's a couple categories that you talked about, right? One is certainly what you might call marketing automation. And that is, as someone comes to your hotel after they've booked, you maybe want to send a couple of pre-arrival messages. And those pre-arrival messages are typically, intended to, number one, inform the guest so that they're going to have a, smooth transfer from hotel or wherever, however they're coming to get to the hotel. But another side of that typically is around upsell, cross-sell. So as an example, if in fact we know that someone's coming, but we can see in the system that they don't have a golf booking or they don't have a booking at the spa, well, then we can include in that email upsell, cross-sell offers for the spa or the golf course. If they've already booked, we know that, and we don't need to kind of tell them again, right? If you say, hey, you should book at the spa, but they already have a booking, they're just simply going to call and say, hey, I thought I had a booking. Why are you asking me to book, right? So it's all sort of dynamic, easy to use. And the results of those sort of campaigns are sort of through the roof. And what I mean by that is if you just send a email to a bunch of guests, you're probably going to get like a 22% open rate. A pre-arrival or any behavioral type of message, you'll get something like a 75% open rate and really, really high click rates as well, right? They're coming to the hotel. They want to enjoy it. And you, of course, want to fill up your restaurant. You want to fill up your spa or your golf course. The same concept can hold true for just simply upselling into a, higher room level, right? From a standard room to a deluxe or into a suite. Since we know all of those things, then, simply allow that sort of messaging to happen. The third piece that's really important here is it's all automated, meaning once you set up a 21-day, 14-day, 7-day pre-arrival series, you don't really need to go back to it. It's just happening all day, every single day. Maybe once winter comes, you want to change out the imagery to a snowy scene rather than a summer scene or something like that. But it really is all just automated. The next thing that you certainly want to do, right? So what we know and what we've got actually analysis in our CDP to show this is what percentage of the revenue comes from your top 20% of guests. And typically, it's around 80% of your revenue comes from only 20% of your guests. We see this across hundreds of databases. And once you know that, you start saying to yourself, okay, I need to act a little bit differently. I need to treat those high-value guests differently. And that means I need to interact with them directly. And I also want to then drive direct bookings to those guests. And once you're driving 20% of, even if you're still getting OTA bookings, if 80% of your revenue is coming from the sort of known guests, the one that you can interact with, then your profitability goes up substantively. So we do have a hotel that has been working with for about 3 years, and they're now at about 85% direct bookings, and that helps margins and profitability in a really, really substantive way.
So, Scott, you talked about results going through the roof so badly, I wanted to say no pun intended, but maybe pun intended because we want to fill those rooms and fill those levels. So, how are hoteliers using this integration to do a few things? Personalize their outreach, drive more direct and repeat bookings, or re-engage guests more effectively?
Yeah. So as you can imagine, all the data that's in Maestro now becomes available to the hotelier, the marketer, to use in text messages, in email, in direct mail, even to push data into Facebook and Google. All of that stuff is there. We focused a little bit more on the email messaging because I think it's sort of clearest to see. But let's first talk personalization. There's sort of simple personalization where you can in a subject line use the person's first name or their booking confirmation code, or what building they're going to be in, and that can be personalized in the subject line, in the pre-header of an email, in the body of an email, and that's actually a pretty good start. What we know is those emails do perform better, but then you start saying, well, entire sections of the email I'd like to make dynamic. So as an example, if you're sending an email to someone who has been to the hotel before, you might use a different hero image than someone who hasn't. Or maybe for a male versus a female, whoever you're sending the email to, maybe you'll have a female hero image or an image of the spa. And if it's a male, maybe you have an image of, the dark fireplace and bar scene in your hotel. And those things really do make a big difference, right? Once you start getting something that's quite customized to the guest, they see it, they interact with it more substantively. So what you'd probably say is any of that data that is in Maestro is available, and that can be not just fields like what their arrival date is, or how many adults are coming, or what room they're in. There then is even a little more sophisticated piece, which is sort of predictive variables that we do create in our system. So we start creating variables like best customer or best next guest. And so a best next guest might in fact be somebody who has come to your hotel's website. They've put their email address in because they want to learn more, right? We call those hand raisers, right? There's someone who said, I'm actually interested. They're in the market, if you will, for a hotel. Maybe they're hoping for a coupon code. You don't necessarily need to send them a coupon code, but now in our system, they're going to be flagged as a next best booker, and you can start communicating with them in ways that will help influence that, right? Tell them the great stuff that's happening in the hotel, send them a calendar, or even just send them, hey, direct bookers, get a free welcome drink when they arrive, or whatever that is. We do see more and more hotels doing things a little bit special for those direct bookers.
I was going to say you have me at spa, but then the welcome drink certainly doesn't hurt either. So
That's right.
let's talk about, gathering that data. And there's a lot of different pieces of data that can come together. So how does the integration between the two systems help create a single unified view of each guest?
Yeah, so there's a couple special things that we do after we pull data out of Maestro. So Maestro is a transactional system, and it is booking guests into hotels. But it's also true that a guest might be coming for different reasons and might over time have changing personal information. So as an example, when they booked the first time, it might have been for business, and they might have used their Deloitte email address. The second time they booked, they said, hey, this was a great hotel. Let me take my wife. and we'll go, see the city a little bit. And now they're using their Gmail address, right? That will be two profiles in Maestro as it should be, right? The bill should go to the Deloitte address and the bill should go to the Gmail address for the personal vacation. And you don't want to necessarily mix those things. Once we get it into the marketing system, what we actually do is clean that data. We clean the emails, we clean the physical addresses, and then we dedupe them into what we might call the golden record. And that is, we actually know that's the same person. They might have two email addresses, but it's the same person. Let's just say that the wife actually booked, 10 months before that. We're actually going to dedupe that into a household. So we know a household, we know individuals, and then we know all the bookings. And we're going to create some metrics around that, like how many nights have they stayed? It could be 22. Now we've got a high value guest. We're going to create, lifetime spend metrics. So we can say, this is actually 3 visits. This isn't just 1 visit 3 times. And the total spend for those 3 visits is $8,200 or something like that. And now we start creating marketing segments. And a marketing segment could be my high value guests. It could be my lapsed guests, right? The people who, haven't been here in a long time. Theoretically, we would have sent a lapsed email to the wife in our example, because she first booked a long time ago, not knowing that actually there are 2 subsequent emails. So if you would send her a lapsed guest email and say, hey, we missed you, and here's 20% off, what you don't realize is, no, she was literally there, 3 months ago, and is now confused by the email that she just got, but maybe happy to get a 20% off when that isn't the guest that you really needed to rebook with a 20% off. They were going to come back anyways.
As a follow-up to that, what are some examples of guest segments hoteliers can create from their data within Maestro?
Yeah. So we've got these sort of drag and drop tools to build segments, and you can use any of the data whatsoever. And I'll just give you some examples, right? You might create a segment of local guests, right? These are the ones that say live within 90 miles of the hotel. And so that you can market last minute inventory to local guests. It's always offensive, and people have probably gotten it where, they live in Denver, they were at a hotel in New York City, and they get a last minute offer, come Tuesday. And you're like, great, I don't know why I read that. I live, 2,400 miles away from the hotel. You can also create a segment of destination guests, just the same. And so you can use geographic information. You can use any of the demographic information we have. Some of that might include, are they male or female? What's their marital status? Do they have children, right? We know that's sort of all data that we can get from Maestro, and you can segment on that demographic data. But you can also use all of the data from Maestro itself. When are they arriving? When are they departing? How many nights have they stayed? What room class are they booking into? What have they spent over time? And so some of those segments will be, hey, I just want to communicate with people about some future booking. So as an example, I want to communicate with my high value guests about an event we've got or something like that. But then there's also this whole class of segments that we like to call automations, and that, pre-arrival fits into that. But another great one that most of our clients do is something like a booking anniversary email, right? So we know when they booked the actual reservation, which might have been 6 months before they arrived. And so why do we want to talk to them at around the same time they booked last year? Because there are life events that happen that sort of drive those bookings. And of course, spring break calendar is like the best example. Once the spring break calendar comes out for all the kids, then all of a sudden people realize, okay, now it's time to go book my next spring break, even though it's 6 months from now. I think that's probably a pretty good example.
Absolutely. And, getting the data is one thing, but being able to use it efficiently is another. So how can this data be activated for things like triggered emails or dynamic campaign personalization? Because as you mentioned, everybody's needs are going to be different, even in the times of when they're looking for whatever they're looking for at the hotel.
Yeah, it's actually really, really straightforward. I mean, our application makes it's just drag and drop. So as an example, you drag arrival date onto a canvas and say anyone arriving in 7 days. That is now effectively a segment, but an automated segment, meaning it's going to be different every day, right? People arriving in 7 days today are going to be arriving next Thursday. But when tomorrow comes around, those are the people who are going to be arriving next Friday, 7 days away. And all you do is say, I'll take an email and I want to automate it to that 7-day pre-arrival segment or audience. And now every single day it goes out, and we've got a calendar in our system that shows our clients all the automations that they actually do have going out, all the confirmations, when those are happening, when those are happening, and even schedule text messages or emails to happen in the future. So what you start getting to is you start getting to this place where our clients really do plan out a guest communication cycle that goes from research inspiration, right? They haven't booked anything yet, but you're sending them inspiring emails to where they're sort of in the planning phase, to where they're in the booking phase, to where they're actually on property. Once they're on property, you can send them text messages. Hey, remember, our restaurant closes at 9:30 tonight. We still have some reservations open. We know that they're on property through the checkout process, and then back through, post departure and back into sort of research and inspiration phase. And so, to your question, activating all that data is just about dragging it onto the palette or using our wizard, which actually lets them, build it through sort of a wizard as well.
Yeah, pretty simple. Thanks so much, Scott, for your insight here. Appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
And we still have a lot to cover in terms of how this integration affects the day-to-day operations for hoteliers, and then how that plays into what the future landscape may shape up to look like as we move forward. So you will not want to miss our third and final episode in this series, talking about Ascent360 with CEO and President Scott Buelter. Big thank you once again to Scott, and I want to thank all of you for listening and tuning in. Be sure to join us on the next episode, and in the meantime, you can visit maestropms.com for more information there and to check out additional podcast episodes. And if you missed the first one in this series, go back and check that out too. I'm your host, Michelle Dawn Mooney. We hope to connect with you on another podcast soon.